Bible studies over at the parsonage. This was years ago. I may look somewhat young, but I'm getting up. But it is nice to see that we could do something like this at the stage again.
Good. I'm curious, is there anybody that grew up attending this church their whole life, like since they were a child?
Yeah, I got married here.
Yeah.
Both my children were baptized. Isabel became a member. Yeah.
Wow.
Been a few years.
You were mentioning your age. My wife and I find that we're at the stage where a lot of people look, if they're younger than us, we figure they're teenagers. Is that a thing that comes with getting old? I don't know, but I talked to a 37-year-old lady today, and I said, "You look like 18." I don't know. I know.
I just had a birthday on last Monday, and my daughter told me I was going down slippery slope.
I remember when Jamie and her brother Mike were growing up, he wasn't in the picture at the time, but when they were growing up, this church was packed with kids. There was, their children, the West kids, how many kids they had 4 kids. Gene English and his daughters, and my 2. And they, they would be able to put on Christmas pageants and everything. That was the only time her father came to church, was to see them for the 2 times that they were in it, had the pageant. But other than that, I mean, then Ricky comes along, nothing. He's the only kid. So there was no Sunday school. I mean, the kids had Sunday school, and I mean, it was joyous to see all these kids, here and stuff.
Time too. Like one day a week, we get out of school like a half hour early, and we'd come here. The bus would take the kids up to the Catholic church. We were doing that.
Well, the pastor would do this thing that scared the life out of me. He would say, "We're going to have popcorn testimonies," and what that meant was, if you testified, you got to say who was next. So I remember as a teenager sweating like, "Oh no, is it going to be me?" We're not going to do that here today. Rest assured.
Also, all 3 of my kids were baptized here.
And all 3 of mine.
Yeah.
Now, that's a good. Do you do baptisms right here?
Yeah.
There's not a tank here, is there?
There is a.
Oh, I see. So you do sprinkle.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Especially
And in the winter, it's probably a good thing.
We don't.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, we don't go to the lake.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, Will, we've got a video from a guy that you probably have met before. The sound is just a little warbled, but I think you'll be able to meet volume. He's okay.
Okay.
But give your attention to the screen, and we'll go from there. We'll give you another chance if you get inspired after he speaks. So.
And we congratulate you guys in the other city to celebrate that you are a red door spiritually. See, many churches, regardless of the denomination they're in, paint their doors red in history to celebrate the mortgage is paid off. It would be a celebration when the churches get together. They would do this because now all that money that used to be used just for paying for the building can be used for outreach programs, church fellowships, and mission. The church was free of debt, and they could concentrate more on the things they wanted to do, like getting warmer through fellowship, getting larger through outreach events, and supporting spiritually mission work all over the world they can celebrate together. See, that's the phase that you have entered into at Adirondack Bible Fellowship. Now you may ask, why red? Why would the doors need to be red, not purple, blue, or green? Red in the Bible is the color of passion, so you more passionately reach out to your neighbors through mission. Red is the color of the blood of Christ, that people get to heaven through. And being debt-free, you can use more of your resources for people to get into heaven. In medieval times, a church door that was painted red meant that that's where somebody could find sanctuary from people trying to persecute them. Now, the same thing is true in your church today, that people can enter your church and be safe from the persecutions and the lack of peace in the outside world. See,
All right, I appreciate John sending that. I've known John for about 11 years since I've been on this district, and so really respect John a lot. Anybody else feel like you want to stand up and just give a praise, or even give a story, maybe a memory that you have of the history here? Going once, going twice.
All right, well, wait a minute, because I've been here for a long time on the board, it seems. Right, Jim, can you remember the days when we couldn't pay the heating bills?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there were, back in the 90s there, I just can't believe we made it.
That's one of those bills you want to be able to pay around here, right?
Yeah, no, we couldn't flat pay, and Mountain Petroleum, they were very kind to us, they let us float for a while, we had that little brown church in the, I don't know where it is right now. Little brown church, we'd put that in the middle of the aisle, and we'd ask people to put in a little bit extra for the fuel fund. It really was, yeah. Yeah. Look at us now, wow.
All right. Everybody done?
I just was thinking, it's a miracle that, what has happened, but we stand here on the shoulders of those who went before us. And I think about, our church has been built and the joy there would be in some of the fathers that were here. I mean, the Armstrongs that were here for so many years. I think about Dorothea
Yeah.
and Jenny and my sister, and Mike and these people. And I just think they're part of this celebration and
Well, when I think about dedication, it takes me back to the 1990s, and I served in a large church as a staff person, and the church was facing a very good problem. We had outgrown our building, a very good problem for a church to have, and we had purchased some land, and we were gonna build a new building. We were wrestling with it. We hadn't done it yet, but we were wrestling with it. And I remember watching I call him my lead pastor. I was, like the junior pastor, I suppose you could say, or assistant pastor. And I remember watching him with the burden of this. We're talking $1 million, right? We didn't have that in the bank, right? Just like you didn't have $100,000 in the bank sitting there wondering what to do with it, right? And I could tell he was really burdened about this, as you can imagine. It was about 400 people in the congregation, okay, but they weren't all givers, and there were a lot of new believers, and, they hadn't quite gotten into the tithing thing yet, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember him really sweating it out. What do we do? And how much do we borrow? And I hate to be in debt. And, and yet the future of the church is at stake, and, all of that. Really wrestled with that. And one of the congregants, a very successful businessman, and John, my lead pastor, pulled me aside one day and told me this. He pulled him aside and he said this. He said, John, if your why is big enough, the how will take care of itself. And I never forgot that. And there's a pretty big why that exists. And that's how the how has happened. And I want to share the why of ADF. And I'm pretty sure I'm spot on here. It's from the most famous verse in the whole Bible. If you've ever heard any verse in the Bible, you've heard this verse. It's John 3:16. It says, for God so loved the world. And I like to get personal with that because it is personal. You can put your name in there. For God so loved Mary. For God so loved Don. For God so loved George. You can put your name in there. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. Love was an action word. For